The elderly woman moved through the automatic doors with the careful, measured steps of someone who had learned long ago that the world rarely slowed down for her anymore. Her gray hair was pulled back in a simple bun, her coat threadbare at the elbows, her shoes the kind you could stand in all day without complaint. She was exactly the kind of person most people looked past without a second thought. The store buzzed with afternoon energy, cash registers beeping, cartwheels squeaking, overhead announcements echoing through fluorescent-lit aisles. Young staff members hurried past her, one nearly clipping her shoulder without apology. She didn't flinch. She'd expected it. Moving deeper into the building, away from the main floor, she noticed the hallway that led to the employee areas. The restrooms, the break room, the places where the real life of a store happened, away from customers and cameras. And that's when she heard it, a sound that made her stop completely. Muffled sobbing, the kind that came from someone trying desperately to stay quiet, but failing. On the floor near a utility closet, she spotted a name badge. Rosa Martinez, sanitation specialist. It lay face up beside a mop bucket, as though it had been torn off in frustration or despair. The woman stood there, her hand hovering near the bathroom door, torn between two instincts. Part of her wanted to walk away, to maintain her cover, to keep observing without interfering. After all, she'd come here for information, and the report she'd been reading for months said everything was perfect. 0 complaints. Model location. Exemplary management. But the crying continued, raw and broken, and she couldn't ignore it. What she was about to discover would force her to question everything. Her leadership, her systems, her belief that good intentions at the top could protect people at the bottom. Stay with this story, because what happens next will change how you see leadership forever. 6 hours earlier, Evelyn Carter had stood in her private bathroom, adjusting the gray wig in the mirror. At 68, she didn't need much makeup to look older, just enough to appear more tired, more defeated than she actually felt. The thrift store coat hung loose on her frame. She bought it specifically for this purpose, along with the worn purse and the shoes that had seen better days. She'd built this company from nothing. Started with a single location 35 years ago when banks wouldn't give her a loan because she was a black woman with too much ambition and not enough collateral. She'd worked every position: stocker, cashier, manager, buyer. Fought racism at every level. Fought sexism. Fought the assumption that she didn't belong in boardrooms and executive suites. And she'd won. Built a multi-billion-dollar enterprise that employed over 50,000 people. But lately, something had been gnawing at her. Anonymous emails. Vague complaints that never made it through official channels. Whispers about one particular location that, on paper, looked flawless. The regional reports showed perfect compliance, stellar employee satisfaction scores, 0 HR incidents. Her district manager praised the store manager there as a rising star. Yet the rumors persisted. Evelyn had learned long ago that older black women occupied a unique space in American society. They were simultaneously respected in theory and invisible in practice. People would cross the street to avoid them, or talk over them, or assume they were custodians or maids regardless of how they dressed. She'd been mistaken for cleaning staff in her own corporate headquarters more times than she could count. Today, she would use that invisibility as a weapon. Now, standing outside that bathroom door, she knocked gently. "Hello? Are you all right in there?" The crying stopped abruptly. Silence. Then a shaky voice. "I'm fine. Just a minute. Take your time, honey. I'm not in a rush." Evelyn kept her voice soft, grandmotherly. "My name is Ms. Eve. I just started here today. Heard you crying and wanted to make sure you're okay." Another long pause. Then the lock clicked. The woman who emerged looked like she'd aged 10 years in the last hour. Rosa Martinez was probably in her early 50s, but exhaustion had carved deep lines around her eyes and mouth. Her hands were cracked and reddened from chemicals, her uniform stained despite obvious efforts to keep it clean. She clutched a crumpled tissue and wouldn't meet Evelyn's eyes. "I'm sorry," Rosa whispered. "I shouldn't be dramatic. I'll get back to work." "You don't look dramatic to me," Evelyn said carefully. "You look like someone carrying too much." Something in Rosa's face crumbled. Maybe it was the kindness. Maybe it was just that she'd been holding everything in for so long that any crack in the dam would cause a flood. "I can't afford to get fired," she said, her voice breaking again. "My granddaughter, she's disabled. She needs me. If I lose this job, why would you get fired for crying in a bathroom?" Rosa's laugh was bitter. "Around here, anything can get you fired. Wrong attitude. Too slow. Asking questions." Evelyn guided her to sit on the bench outside the restrooms. "Tell me what's happening." At first, Rosa resisted. Years of being told to be grateful for what you have, to keep your head down, to never complain. Those lessons ran deep. But slowly, painfully, the story emerged. Her hours had been cut from 35 a week to barely 20, keeping her just below the threshold for benefits. Yet she was expected to be available anytime, any shift, with schedules changing constantly and unpredictably. Last week she'd been called in on her day off, told it was an emergency, then sent home after 2 hours because we overstaffed today. Those 2 hours didn't even cover her bus fare. When she'd asked the manager, Kyle, about the missing hours she'd been promised, he'd written her up for insubordination and poor attitude. He'd looked her in the eye and said, "There are 20 people who'd take your job tomorrow. You should be grateful we keep you at all." Evelyn felt something cold and sharp settle in her chest. "Show me your schedule." In the break room, she found chaos masquerading as organization. The schedule board was covered in handwritten changes, crossed-out names, conflicting shifts. Notes about corrective counseling and final warnings were posted alongside cheerful corporate posters about our workplace family and success through teamwork. Rosa's phone kept lighting up with reminders. Medication times for her granddaughter, overdue bills, a text from a neighbor asking if she could pick up an extra shift babysitting because "I really need the money." Her last paycheck stub, which she showed Evelyn with trembling hands, barely covered rent. Nothing left for utilities or food or the mounting medical bills. "Corporate policy," Rosa said quietly. "That's what Kyle always says. It's corporate policy. I don't make the rules. Take it up with them if you want. But how am I supposed to do that? I don't even know who them is." Evelyn knew exactly who them was, and she was looking at one of them in the mirror every morning. By evening, Evelyn had managed to secure a trial shift by approaching Kyle directly, playing the desperate older woman who'd take any work available. She'd watched his eyes sweep over her dismissively. Gray hair, slow movements, cheap clothes. Easy mark, easily controlled. "We could try you out for a night," he'd said with the air of someone doing charity work. "Minimum wage, no promises. Can you handle a mop?" "I've been cleaning for 50 years, Evelyn said, making her voice smaller, grateful. "I'll work hard, I promise." The smirk on his face made her want to fire him on the spot. But she needed to see more. Night shift revealed the truth beneath the corporate cheerfulness. Kyle transformed when he thought only his staff were watching. He talked down to everyone, but especially older women and immigrants. His favorite tactic was constant threat. Your hours could disappear. Your schedule could change. You could be replaced tomorrow. "You should be grateful to even have a job," was his mantra, repeated so often it seemed like a prayer. Evelyn watched him correct timesheets right in front of workers, slashing hours for invented infractions. "You took a long break. You made mistakes. You were inefficient." The workers, most of whom had been meticulously careful, could only stand there and take it. What choice did they have? He deliberately overloaded Evelyn with tasks, scrubbing bathrooms, restocking heavy items, covering multiple departments, and then penalized her for not completing everything fast enough. She felt in her knees, her back, her shoulders. This was what Rosa faced every day, except Rosa didn't have a corner office and executive salary waiting for her at the end of the shift. But there was something else. Evelyn noticed anomalies in the staff logs. Someone racking up massive overtime hours despite never being on the floor. When she quietly checked the time card system during a break, she found an employee ID that didn't match any actual person working there. Kyle wasn't just cruel. He was stealing. Around 1 a.m, she noticed Kyle slipping into his office for what seemed like a scheduled call. She positioned herself nearby with a cleaning cart, phone recording in her pocket. His voice carried through the thin door, arrogant and relaxed. "Yeah, Same playbook as always. Keep the labor costs down, you know? These older ones are perfect. They're scared shitless they won't find anything else, so they take whatever you give them. You just got to know how to handle them. Evelyn's hand tightened on the mop handle. I keep them under 30 hours, rotate schedules so they can't plan anything, write them up for attitude if they ask questions. Works every time. And the best part? Corporate sees zero complaints because these people know they're replaceable. A pause as he listened to whoever was on the other end. Oh, the overtime? Yeah, that's going to the ghost account like usual. Split it with Brian at the district office. We bill it as training time. That never happened. Nobody checks. The old ladies are too grateful to have any hours at all to notice. He laughed. And if anyone does get suspicious, we just say they're confused or making mistakes. Who's corporate gonna believe? A professional manager or some janitor with a 6th grade education? Evelyn's face remained carefully neutral, but inside she was burning. She had everything. His voice, his exact words, the systematic abuse, the theft, the conspiracy that reached beyond this one store. This wasn't about one bad manager. This was about a template, a playbook being used across multiple locations, targeting the most vulnerable workers specifically because they were the easiest to exploit. The next morning, Kyle called a mandatory staff meeting before opening. Rosa was there, exhausted from a double shift, dark circles under her eyes. Other older workers gathered along with young single mothers, immigrant staff, people who all looked like they were bracing for another blow. Kyle stood at the front, radiating false authority. All right, listen up. New policies coming down from corporate. We're implementing stricter inventory controls, which means any errors come out of the responsible person's check. Also, performance standards are being raised. If you can't keep up, we'll find someone who can. He used the phrase, "you people," twice in his little speech, his tone dripping with condescension. Several workers exchanged glances, but said nothing. What could they say? Evelyn stood at the back, still in her cleaning uniform, phone in hand. She took a deep breath and stepped forward. Before you continue, I think everyone should hear something. Kyle's head snapped toward her, irritated. Excuse me? Who told you to talk? She pressed play. His own voice filled the room, unmistakable and damning. These older ones are perfect. They're scared shitless they won't find anything else. Keep them under 30 hours. Write them up for attitude. The overtime goes to the ghost account. Who's corporate gonna believe? A professional manager or some janitor with a 6th grade education? The silence was absolute. Every worker's face showed shock, then recognition, then something harder, fury. They'd known he was bad. They hadn't known he was openly mocking them, stealing from them, conspiring against them. Kyle's face went from red to white. You can't. That's out of context. Where did you even? Evelyn pulled off her wig. She stood straighter, letting her real voice emerge, the one that had commanded boardrooms and negotiations for decades. My name is Evelyn Carter. I'm the founder and CEO of this company. And you're fired. The room erupted. Some workers gasped. Others started crying. Kyle stammered, tried to talk over her, tried to threaten her before realizing what he'd just said. Security, who'd been waiting just outside on Evelyn's earlier instruction, entered and escorted him out while he protested and pleaded. But Evelyn wasn't done. She turned to face the staff, these people who'd been invisible to her corporate reports, whose suffering had been systematically hidden and dismissed. I owe all of you an apology, she said. I built this company on values of dignity and respect. I've stood on stages and talked about protecting workers. And I failed you. I trusted systems that were corrupted. I believed reports that were lies. I thought good intentions at the top were enough. Her voice caught. They weren't. And I'm sorry. Rosa was openly weeping now, but not from despair anymore. Within hours, Evelyn had set up a triage center in the break room. Workers lined up to review their hours, their pay discrepancies, their withheld benefits. She brought in HR staff she trusted and legal counsel who specialized in labor rights. Every single complaint was documented, investigated, and addressed. Rosa learned she'd been owed full-time status for 8 months. She received back pay, immediate benefits enrollment, and coverage for her granddaughter's medical needs effective immediately. When Evelyn told her, Rosa collapsed into a chair and sobbed with relief. Older employees who'd been deliberately passed over for advancement received priority for management training programs. A young woman named Maria, who'd been helping translate for Spanish-speaking workers and advocating for them despite having no formal authority, was offered a position as official employee liaison with a real salary and voice in policy decisions. Evelyn announced the creation of an employee council with elected representatives from every level and department, with special attention to ensuring older workers, women, immigrants, and anyone else historically pushed to the margins had guaranteed seats and real power. She implemented surprise audits, a dedicated anonymous hotline run by an external firm, and zero-tolerance policies for retaliation. Anyone who even hinted at punishing workers for speaking up would be immediately terminated and reported to authorities. 3 months later, the same store looked completely different. The schedule board showed consistency and advance notice. Workers laughed in the break room. The new manager, promoted from within and trained under Evelyn's direct oversight, treated staff like human beings deserving respect. A national retail conference, Evelyn told the story publicly. She stood on that stage in front of hundreds of executives and didn't spare herself. "I thought I'd build protections," she said. "I thought good policies were enough. But policies mean nothing if you're not checking whether they're actually being followed. If you're not listening to the people at the bottom. If you're not willing to see the truth, even when it's ugly and inconvenient." She paused, looking directly at the audience and, by extension, anyone who would watch the video later. If you've ever seen someone crying in a bathroom at work, don't look away. Maybe you're not a CEO. Maybe you think you don't have power. But you have more than you realize. You can witness. You can document. You can refuse to participate in cruelty. You can speak up, even when it's risky. Especially when it's risky. The people who stock your shelves, clean your buildings, serve your food, they're not disposable. They're not grateful labor units to be managed and manipulated. They're human beings who deserve dignity, stability, and respect. And if your business model requires treating them as less than that, then your business model is broken. The story spread across social media, shared by workers and advocates, and anyone who'd ever felt invisible in their workplace. Some praised Evelyn's actions. Others pointed out, rightly, that the systems that allowed Kyle to operate shouldn't have existed in the first place. She accepted both the praise and the criticism. Rosa Martinez was interviewed for a news segment. She spoke carefully, still somewhat disbelieving of her new reality. Stable hours, real benefits, respect for management. "I just wanted to be able to take care of my granddaughter," she said. "I wasn't asking for much, just to be treated like a person." That became the rallying cry. Just to be treated like a person. It shouldn't have been revolutionary. But in too many workplaces, for too many people, it was. Evelyn kept that gray wig in her office as a reminder. Sometimes the people with the most power were the ones most blind to how that power was actually being used. Sometimes you had to strip away your authority to see where it was failing. Sometimes the only way to understand what was really happening was to become invisible yourself. And sometimes, she thought, looking at the photos on her wall of Rosa and her granddaughter, of Maria in her new role, of older workers finally receiving the respect they'd always deserved. Sometimes justice required someone with power to step down into powerlessness long enough to remember what really mattered. The work wasn't finished. It would never be finished, but it had begun.